Narrator. Welcome back to the English Learning Podcast's Intermediate Guide series. Today we're delving into one of the most sophisticated aspects of communication: expressing nuanced opinions and explaining your views. It's easy enough to say, I agree or I disagree, but how do you articulate the subtle complexities of your perspective? How do you share an opinion that isn't black and white, or explain your reasoning in a way that's both persuasive and respectful, even when facing opposing viewpoints? This skill is vital for engaging in meaningful discussions, building consensus, and navigating the intricate landscape of professional and social interactions. How do you move beyond simple statements to convey the depth of your thoughts, acknowledge different angles, and elaborate on the foundations of your beliefs? What linguistic tools allow you to express degrees of certainty, introduce caveats, or respectfully challenge an idea? And how do you ensure your explanations are clear, coherent, and compelling without being dogmatic or dismissive? This episode is designed to equip you with the essential vocabulary, strategic approaches, and practical insights necessary to approach discussions with confidence, intellectual rigor, and communicative finesse. Today's discussion moves beyond casual conversation, exploring the art of persuasive discourse and the careful crafting of arguments. We are privileged to host a conversation between Dr. Julian Thorne, a renowned professor of rhetoric and argumentation from Oxford University, and Ms. Anya Sharma, a celebrated columnist and political commentator for The Global Herald, who frequently navigates complex public debates. Their dialogue will illuminate the best practices and common pitfalls in articulating sophisticated viewpoints, offering you a richer understanding of how to make your voice heard with clarity, impact, and a deep appreciation for the nuances of thought. So, let's explore the intricacies and power of truly mastering the expression of nuanced opinions. Julian, Anya, it's a genuine pleasure to finally speak with you. Your columns are consistently models of clarity and insightful argumentation, often tackling profoundly complex issues. From your perspective, when you're preparing to articulate a nuanced opinion or explain a multifaceted view, what are your initial, most crucial considerations? Do you immediately think about your core argument, or is there a broader context you establish first? Anya. Julian, the pleasure is entirely mutual. Your academic work on rhetoric has significantly informed my approach to public commentary. When preparing to articulate a nuanced opinion, my initial consideration is always to establish the broader context and the underlying assumptions that shape the discussion. Before presenting my core argument, I try to identify the various existing perspectives on the issue and the common ground, if any. This allows me to position my opinion within a larger intellectual landscape and signal to the audience that I've considered different angles. I also immediately assess the audience's likely understanding and their potential sensitivities to the topic. My foundational groundwork involves framing the issue in a way that invites thoughtful engagement, rather than immediate polarization. Do you find that a failure to establish this initial context is a common pitfall in public discourse? Julian, absolutely, Anya. Your emphasis on establishing broader context and audience assessment is unequivocally fundamental. A failure to do so is indeed one of the most common and detrimental pitfalls, leading to misunderstandings, unnecessary defensiveness, and often, a complete breakdown of productive dialogue. Without a shared understanding of the contextual landscape, opinions can appear abrupt or irrelevant. My research shows that speakers who explicitly acknowledge the complexity of an issue and the validity of different perspectives, even if they ultimately disagree, significantly enhance their credibility and the receptiveness of their audience. What specific linguistic or structural strategies do you employ to convey the nuance of your opinion, moving beyond a simple for or against to express degrees of certainty, qualifications, or limitations? Anya. That's where the precise calibration of language becomes paramount, Julian. My primary strategy for conveying nuance involves using specific linguistic markers that signal complexity and moderation. Instead of definitive statements, I often employ modal verbs and adverbs like might, could, perhaps, potentially, it's probable that, or it seems plausible that. This indicates a degree of uncertainty or a particular angle, rather than an absolute truth. I also frequently use qualifying phrases such as, while it's true that X, it's also important to consider Y, or on the one hand this perspective holds merit, on the other hand it overlooks. This allows me to acknowledge complexities without committing to a single rigid stance. Introducing caveats is also vital. This applies largely to cases where, or with the caveat that. For example, when discussing economic policy, I might say, while the proposed tax cut might stimulate growth in the short term, it's potentially contingent on consumer confidence, and we should perhaps consider its long-term impact on public services. Do you find that a fear of appearing indecisive sometimes prevents individuals from expressing these necessary nuances? Julian: That's an excellent point, Anya, and your use of modal verbs and qualifying phrases is precisely what I encourage for nuanced expression. And yes, a fear of appearing indecisive, or perhaps a desire to project unwavering conviction, often prevents individuals from embracing nuance. Paradoxically, this can make arguments less persuasive rather than more. True intellectual strength often lies in the ability to acknowledge complexity and limitations. My research suggests that listeners often find speakers who can articulate nuanced views more credible and trustworthy because they appear to have engaged with the issue more deeply. What role does evidence and logical reasoning play in explaining your views, especially when those views might be counterintuitive or challenge deeply held beliefs? Anya: Evidence and logical reasoning are the bedrock of explaining any view, Julian, especially when it's counterintuitive or challenges deeply held beliefs. Without them, an opinion is just that, an opinion easily dismissed. When my view is nuanced or goes against the grain, I lean heavily on presenting compelling data, credible studies, or well-established facts to support my assertions. I meticulously cite sources or refer to recognized experts. More importantly, I emphasize the logical progression of my argument, explaining how the evidence leads to my conclusion. I break down complex reasoning into clear steps, using phrases that signpost the argument. Therefore, it follows that this suggests a direct correlation, or consequently we can infer. I also anticipate potential counterarguments and address them directly, showing that I've considered opposing viewpoints and can logically refute or accommodate them. This intellectual rigor is paramount. How do you approach the challenge of respectfully disagreeing or challenging someone else's opinion while still explaining your own view clearly, without becoming confrontational or dismissive? Julian: Anya, your emphasis on evidence and logical progression, coupled with anticipating counterarguments, is the hallmark of robust argumentation. The challenge of respectfully disagreeing is indeed central to productive discourse. My approach focuses on separating the idea from the person. I use phrases that soften the disagreement and frame it as a difference in perspective or interpretation. For instance, instead of "you're wrong," I'd say, "I see your point, but I'm inclined to view it slightly differently," or, "while I understand your reasoning, my analysis leads me to a different conclusion." I focus on the merits of their argument before introducing my own, perhaps saying, "I appreciate your perspective on X, and it raises a valid concern. However, I believe Y is also a crucial factor because I also use I statements to express my view without directly invalidating theirs. I find myself struggling with the premise that, or my concern here is." This keeps the focus on the content of the argument, fostering an environment where ideas can be debated without personal attack. What are the common pitfalls individuals fall into when attempting to explain complex views, and how can they maintain clarity without oversimplifying? Anya: Julian, your strategies for respectful disagreement are excellent. Separating the idea from the person is crucial. The common pitfalls individuals fall into when trying to explain complex views often stem from a lack of structural clarity or assuming too much prior knowledge. One pitfall is information dumping, presenting too much detail all at once without clear organization, overwhelming the audience. Another is using excessive technical jargon or abstract concepts without adequate explanation or real-world examples, leaving the audience bewildered. A third is failing to connect abstract ideas to practical implications, leaving listeners wondering, so what? Finally, individuals might rush through their explanation or fail to pause for questions, missing crucial opportunities to gauge understanding. To avoid these, speakers must consciously employ structural signposting. First, let's consider. Second, we move to. Finally, this leads us to. They should use analogies or metaphors to make complex ideas more relatable, drawing comparisons to familiar concepts. Providing concrete examples is also vital, anchoring the abstract in reality. And crucially, regularly pausing to check for understanding, perhaps with a phrase like, "Does that make sense so far?" Or, Are there any questions about that point? Helps maintain clarity without oversimplifying. How do you believe the increasing speed of information in modern media impacts the public's ability to engage with and appreciate nuanced opinions? Julian. Anya, your points on structural clarity, using analogies, and checking for understanding are paramount for effective explanation. The increasing speed of information in modern media, unfortunately, presents a significant challenge to the public's ability to engage with and appreciate nuanced opinions. The relentless demand for brevity, sound bites, and immediate gratification often favor sensationalism and oversimplification. Complex issues are reduced to binary choices, for or against, and subtle distinctions are lost in the noise. This environment can foster cognitive shortcuts and a decreased tolerance for ambiguity or prolonged intellectual engagement. Social media algorithms, in particular, often create echo chambers that reinforce existing beliefs and actively filter out diverse or nuanced viewpoints, making it harder for individuals to encounter and process alternative perspectives. Consequently, it requires greater intentionality from both communicators like yourself to deliver nuance effectively, and from audiences to actively seek out depth beyond headlines. In your experience, how crucial is empathy in effectively explaining your views, particularly when addressing an audience that might hold vastly different perspectives? Anya. David, that's a profoundly important observation about the impact of modern media. It's a constant battle to resist the pull towards oversimplification. Regarding empathy, it is unequivocally crucial in effectively explaining your views, especially to an audience with vastly different perspectives. Empathy isn't about agreeing with someone's opinion, but about understanding the underlying values, concerns, or experiences that shape their viewpoint. When I write or speak, I try to put myself in the shoes of someone who holds a differing opinion and ask, what are their legitimate concerns here? What evidence might they be looking at? What emotional drivers might be at play? This helps me frame my explanation in a way that addresses their potential objections or speaks to their core values, rather than just stating my own position. Using phrases like, I understand why some might feel that way, or, it's natural to be concerned about, can create a bridge, signaling that you're not dismissing their perspective outright. It shifts the dynamic from a confrontation to a shared exploration of an issue, making your explanation more relatable and your audience more receptive. Ultimately, empathy allows for the construction of shared understanding, even if it doesn't always lead to shared agreement. How do you ensure your explanations remain persuasive and impactful without veering into dogmatism or condescension? Julian. Anya, your articulation of empathy, understanding underlying values and concerns, is precisely the nuanced approach I advocate. It's the cornerstone of ethical persuasion. To ensure explanations remain persuasive and impactful without veering into dogmatism or condescension, several rhetorical strategies are essential. First, maintaining a tentative yet confident tone is key. This means presenting your argument with conviction, but always leaving room for further discussion or new information. Avoiding absolute language, always, never, it is a fact that, and instead using phrases like my analysis suggests, it appears to me that, or the evidence strongly indicates fosters openness. Second, actively inviting counterarguments or questions demonstrates intellectual humility and confidence in your own reasoning. Phrases like, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, or, where do you see potential weaknesses in this argument? Encourage genuine dialogue. Third, focusing on the logic and evidence rather than asserting personal authority avoids condescension. The strength of your argument should speak for itself. Finally, acknowledging the complexity of the issue itself rather than implying that your view is the only correct one is vital. For example, stating, this is a multifaceted problem with no easy answers, but I believe this approach offers the most sustainable path. What long-term benefits do individuals and society gain from fostering a culture where nuanced opinions can be expressed and understood effectively? Anya. Julian, your insights on maintaining a tentative yet confident tone and inviting counterarguments are excellent guidance for avoiding dogmatism. The long-term benefits of fostering a culture where nuanced opinions can be expressed and understood effectively are manifold and deeply impactful for both individuals and society. For individuals, it cultivates sharper critical thinking skills, as they learn to deconstruct complex arguments and construct their own with precision. It builds greater intellectual humility and open-mindedness, fostering a willingness to learn from diverse perspectives. This leads to stronger interpersonal relationships, as individuals become adept at engaging in respectful disagreement and building bridges of understanding. It also enhances personal confidence in articulating complex thoughts. For society, this culture leads to more robust and effective public policy, as decisions are based on a comprehensive understanding of diverse viewpoints rather than simplistic black and white thinking. It strengthens democratic discourse, enabling citizens to engage meaningfully with complex societal challenges. It promotes innovation and creative problem-solving, as different perspectives are synthesized to find novel solutions. Crucially, it helps combat polarization and misinformation by encouraging deeper engagement with ideas rather than tribal allegiance. Ultimately, it nurtures a more informed, tolerant, and intellectually vibrant society, capable of navigating the complexities of the modern world with greater wisdom and collective intelligence. Narrator: what an exceptionally illuminating and practical conversation with Dr. Julian Thorne and Ms. Anya Sharma. Their expert insights have masterfully illuminated the critical nuances involved in expressing sophisticated opinions and explaining complex views. We've explored everything from establishing context and employing precise linguistic markers to respectfully disagreeing and battling the forces of oversimplification. Their discussion powerfully underscores that effective articulation of nuance is not a mere communication technique, but a profound act of intellectual honesty, empathy, and a cornerstone of productive dialogue. Now, let's consolidate some of the key vocabulary and concepts from their rich dialogue that you can integrate into your own communication practices. Practice session: expressing yourself. Let's revisit some valuable phrases and concepts from today's in-depth episode. Practice using these in your own discussions. Broader context: the larger situation or background that helps explain something. Unequivocally fundamental: absolutely essential or crucial. Modal verbs and adverbs: words like might, could, perhaps, potentially used to express possibility or degrees of certainty. Qualifying phrases: phrases that add conditions or limitations to a statement, e.g., while it's true that, on the one hand. Caveats: warnings or conditions that limit a statement. Bedrock: the fundamental principle or foundation. Logical progression: the clear and sequential way ideas lead to a conclusion. Intellectual rigor: thoroughness and precision in thinking. Cognitive shortcuts: mental tricks or biases that lead to quick but sometimes inaccurate conclusions. Manifold and deeply impactful: many and having a strong effect. Choose 3 of these phrases and explain how you might use them to express a nuanced opinion about a current event or a personal decision. For example, regarding the new city policy, I understand its broader context in terms of urban development. However, I have a caveat that its long-term effects on local businesses might be negative, despite its good intentions. When discussing climate change, it's unequivocally fundamental to consider the scientific bedrock of the data, even if popular opinion sometimes relies on cognitive shortcuts. My view on the recent historical interpretation is nuanced. While the primary evidence offers a certain logical progression, I think we should perhaps consider alternative interpretations through a different lens. Narrator: as Dr. Julian Thorne and Ms. Anya Sharma so eloquently articulated, mastering the art of expressing nuanced opinions and explaining your views is a powerful tool for intellectual engagement and social harmony. It's about moving beyond simple judgments to explore the richness of ideas, build bridges of understanding, and contribute thoughtfully to any conversation. By embracing intellectual rigor, utilizing precise language, and practicing empathy, you can make your voice resonate with clarity, impact, and a profound appreciation for the complexities of the human experience. Until our next insightful discussion on the English Learning Podcast, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep articulating your unique perspective with confidence and finesse.